Are young people disengaged? Young people's relationship with contemporary politics is often problematized. Following Farthing, we can identify a dominant traditional disengaged paradigm which sees young people as passive and devoid of political interests. They appear to be a social problem that calls for urgent interventions to ensure the sustainability of democratic politics. Sadly, these initiatives think they can indoctrinate with brittle concept of politics and offer young people adult-centric notion of citizenship. The disengaged paradigm stands in contrast with the critical traditional engaged paradigm, which sees the young people as actively political in new forms. The main suggestion is to understand how young people define politics and to recognize less traditional political practices, such as online political participation and political consumerism. There are still few policy initiatives designed to support engaged young people. For instance, funding initiatives and responding to requests for a special training. Building on Beck's risk theory, Farthing suggests adding a third paradigm which sees young people as radically unpolitical. Young people are often critical of the state, and their dissent is expressed by active withdrawal. They increasingly demand smaller, intensive, personal actions, and they try to be the change, not to vote for change. I think that both engagement and disengagement are occurring. Young people are likely to suffer globally from rising unemployment, and we can expect adverse impacts on their health, housing, and welfare to follow. Moreover, we should not overlook the heterogeneity of young people and not ignore the overall decline in traditional political participation. Young people cannot be a scapegoat for the contemporary decreasing membership of political parties and voter turnout. Youth mobilizations are those in which substantial numbers of participants have been themselves and have been regarded by others as an upcoming, usurping generation rather than instances of young people being mobilized by older politicians. Mannheim argued that every cohort of young people was likely to be deeply affected by political events at that time when they were first becoming politically aware, that is, during their youth. The kind of political events that have been regarded as likely to lead to the formation of a distinctive generational consciousness have been wars, terroristic incidents, deep economic recessions. Famous examples from the past are student and anti-war movements of the 60s, which were linked to the civil rights protests of Afro-Americans in the 50s. A new political generation may have to wait decades before achieving political power, and the policies implemented can be very different from those advocated when young. The student radicals of the 60s did not expect their generation to include authors of neoliberalism, which started to dismantle welfare states. Looking at the present, we can see some potential political generations. For example, Arab Springs started in 2011 with mass protests where young people were high profile. The spark that ignited the Arab Spring was struck on 17 December 2010 in Sidi Bouzid, a small town in Tunisia, when a 26-year-old street vendor, Mohamed Bouzizi, set fire to himself when instructed to cease trading because he did not have a valid license. When he died on 4 January 2011, young people from Tunis, the capital city, led a mass protest which ended when President Ben Ali fled after 29 days of demonstration. By then, protests had started in many Arab countries. Another significant potential new political generation is linked to the global opposition to neoliberal policies. This seems to be the only contemporary movement that has drawn together youth from many different countries, since the international brigades see the anti-fascist opposition to General Franco's coup in Spain in the 30s. The first new global mass mobilization were at a meeting of the World Trade Organization in Seattle in 1999, then at G8 meeting in Geneva in 2001. By then, we had witnessed many demonstrations where young people had an important role. For instance, during 2011, thousands of young Greeks joined a series of demonstrations in Athens against austerity policies. In Spain, this austerity sparked the Indignados. Colin Crouch described European society of the beginning of the 21st century as post-democratic. Standard procedures of the liberal democracy run as usual, but actually, citizens have little to say on what governments decide following economic elites. How can contemporary crisis of democracy affect young people? Like any social group, young people's participation is influenced by many social and cultural factors. In your opinion, what factors can facilitate or be an obstacle to political engagement? Discuss the limits of the neoliberal transformation with persons who participated in social movements during the 60s and 70s. What do you think about new global movements? Discuss the role of political generations with your peers. What do you think about what happened in Arab Spring? You can discuss youth transnational activism after watching the documentary Chicago Girl, where a 19-year-old girl from her bedroom in Chicago suburbs takes part in Syrian revolution by using social media. Do social media play a significant role in youth participation? Offline social interactions are deeply linked to online interactions. Youth participation is shaped by Web 2.0 today. It is not deterministic. What young people learn from internet influences their offline lives, and what they experience daily offline influence their online activities. Social media are tools which allow young people to generate new meanings and experiment new citizenship practices. They play an important role in new politics, which tries to democratize society. Following Luca Altieri and Luca Arfini, new politics makes room for going beyond the liberal democratic model. Core traits are a move away from understanding political participation as centered on mandate and delegation, the rejection of hierarchical and bureaucratic organization, informality and the resorting to protest and to conflict, and the foundation of individualized political practice that stays on the borders of the public and private sphere. New media are as a resource for participation and a tool for mobilizations. However, political uses of internet are shaped by civic cultures and internet cultures, and there are different degrees of digital inclusion. Digital media do not substitute traditional forms of activism, such as marches in the streets and demonstrations in public squares, but they spread useful information for organizing these activities. They become powerful catalysts for actions. See smart mob or flash mob, that is to say, an improvised aggregation of people who together planned online to do something together in a public offline space, such as flash sit-in or a march. Moreover, they become a massive sounding board for promoting forms of political consumerism, that is, they orient consumers to choose products and producers on the basis of ethical and political considerations. Boycott, naming and shaming, also through cultural jamming, for example, famous multinational exploitation of child labor, but also boycott is fair trade. Contemporary youth participation is often expressed by cause-oriented actions in which young people act not towards the state, but towards specific issues. collectivist, collective action is replaced by individualized collective action. Individualized citizens who cooperate, connected online, forming networked publics and combining post-materialistic and materialist claims. New information and communication technologies became tools useful for enlarging the public sphere and involving marginalized young people. Children of migrants living in contemporary Europe have digital tools which were not previously available, for example, to the children of immigrants in post-war France or Great Britain. The Internet has facilitated the precocious creation of forms of self-awareness among children of immigrants in Italy. Since 2005, an interethnic network called G2 has been offering a virtual space for all those young people who feel de facto Italians, even if legally speaking they are not. In fact, Italian nationality law number 91 affirms the principle of jus sanguinis and makes it difficult even for those children of immigrants who are born in Italy to become Italian citizens. G2 battles is both political and cultural. On the one hand, there is a demand for an Italianness which is compatible with cultural diversity. On the other, through awareness-raising campaigns such as I Am Italy Too, G2 has managed to create alliances with many actors in civil society to demand that the highly restrictive law be changed. These young people have also been able to work in formal politics through a Facebook page which documents their parliamentary activism. All the actions they have taken to have their voice heard and to follow the reform of nationality law, which in recent years has always seemed to be on the verge of being passed. Digital media is transforming politics, but it's not necessarily true that it will change will work towards a more democratic configuration. Don't idealize new media. Their use is socially determined. They do not eliminate old inequalities, and they create new ones. I suggest you to discuss both the limits and the potentialities of youth participation through new media. Why is everyday life important? Young people see the greatest potential in everyday issues-based, localized and youth-led processes that are culturally relevant and integrated into their lives. Their views indicate a strong preference for the politics of the ordinary. Politics driven by young people has become fun and mixes old and new agendas. For instance, Anita Harris suggests focusing on youth cultural production and consumption. Youth cultural practices are important in shaping civic engagement. Through a civic use of social media, young people, especially girls, try to have young people's voice heard. Blogs are increasingly understood as a new kind of being publics for young people, as collective space for reflecting on and debating social and political issues. Work on the self as form of civic engagement, ethics, aesthetics and politics intersect. Those micropolitical actions are important for third wave feminists too. Roker suggests that there is a common image of mainly white middle-class youth participating in social action. However, when social action is more broadly defined to include a range of ways of promoting change, acting for a public good, and especially challenging discrimination and disadvantage, it becomes possible to identify and understand the civic experiences of marginalized youth and consider more girls' everyday activism. Claims to beauty were central in many anti-racist projects, as seen in Afro-American civil rights movement. Black is beautiful. However, in feminist debates, the ways in which beauty can be part of political resistance has been ignored for a long time. The main feminist critique has been devoted against sexualized beauty standards, which oppressed women. Most recent feminist reflection on beauty instead have devoted attention to the agency of women. According to Shirley Tate, women are not beauty dopes or beauty dupes. Researching black beauty in Britain, she showed everyday anti-racist practice of black British young women. My research on young women raised in Italy showed me how a Facebook page called Afro-Italian Nappy Girls, the first space in Italian that would promote the care of Afro-textured hair, founded in 2014 by 26-year-old Italian Ghanaian woman Evelyn Afowa. The Afro-Italian Nappy Girls page and then the blog Nappy Italian allowed many young women to experiment with forms of collective self-consciousness, provide mutual support in the struggle against discrimination, resist assimilation pressures, avoid the feeling of inferiority, and agitate for the rights of a new generation of Italians. Although the Nappy Girls group was born in Milan, the city where Evelyn lives, today group's activities have extended throughout several Italian cities. For instance, thanks to offline events called Nappy Hours, where young Afro-Italian women meet to discuss how to liberate themselves from Eurocentric beauty standards and celebrate their hair. Blog and Facebook pages are tools which bring together individual dimensions, sometimes narcissistic, and a collective dimension, see contents posted in tight networks of relation. I invite you to discuss what are the limits and potential of informal and personalized acts of youth engagement. Thank you.